I haven't done anything which has touched millions of lives. I haven't really had a huge impact on anyone. I'm just going to share my own personal journey as an entrepreneur and how it has evolved over a period of time. I'm a first generation entrepreneur. My parents were not into business. In fact, they were very worried when I started this entrepreneurial journey. My father was in the army. My mother was a teacher, so I had no real background on that. Uh, One of the things they did, however, believe in was good education. However, as luck would have it for them, their son was not very good in education at that point in time. So I think, like a lot of kids out here, my life during those early stages revolved around playing cricket, and that's what I used to follow. Right? That's the only thing I used to live, dream, breathe. But as luck would have it, my first reality check happened when I went for the Delhi under 15 cricket trials, and I realized that the world outside is very different from what you perceive it within your little cocoon. So being good in your own school, being good in in a slightly in your zone is not enough. If you really want to be good, if you really want to do something, you have to be willing to take on the world. And for that, you need to do something very different, right? So if you don't have the ability in that particular field, then you need to look for a field in which you can really take on the world. So that was a real stark learning. It was a rude shock to get shaken out of that cocoon. And then over a period of the next few years, I spent a lot more time and effort towards education. I finally managed to do something good in the class 12th exams, managed to get through a decent college. There were a couple of friends of mine from college who seemed to be in this peer group. So that gives you an indication of how old or how young we guys are. But we went through that college, and as luck would have it, Mandal Commission had just happened. And that was a fantastic year, I felt, for us guys, because there was nothing really that happened in school and college during those years, right? And I just thought that I was really whiling away my time in college at that point. So I came across this opportunity to start a small chemical manufacturing unit in Bhiwadi. I took all the little, or whatever little savings my father had to set that unit up. I ran that business, and Bhiwadi, that time, please remember, is not the glamorous kind of unit that you see today, right? Bhiwadi at that time has no real road. It meant, skipping college, driving down the old highway to that place which used to be about 2-3 hours ago, while everyone else who was with you in college was having a blast. However, I did that for 2.5 years, and as luck would have it, I lost my father his entire savings. That business failed completely. It just showed the naivety of my own thought process. It just showed, how underprepared I was for what lay ahead of me. So I think as you start growing up as a child, you grow up into a young person, and you feel you have the sense that you can take on the entire world. But when you do have this sense, one of the things that you also need to realize is that it is good to think that way, but do you really have the skills also to take on the rest of the world? And I think without having the skills, just trying to do that is foolhardy. I remember having this long conversation with my father at that point in time, and he said, listen, the only safety net someone like us can build is education. So over the course of the next 7-8 years, I went through multiple degrees. I did a CA. I ended up going to one of the top 10 business schools in the world for an MBA. And for a child who till literally the 10th, 11th standard was struggling for studies, I think I ended up studying way more than I had ever thought in my life. But that's the safety net I was able to build. I was fortunate that straight after this fiasco happened, I was selected by Arthur Andersen, which used to be a fantastic organization at that point in time. I got a role in the consulting outfit. And the only reason I got the role over there was because, as opposed to my peers who had fantastic grades, I was the only one who had some relevant work experience. In today's environment, it's slightly different. When people go into business school or go into jobs, they typically have some work experience. In the early 90s, people, typically you finish school, you were told to either get into an engineering college or told to get into med school or something like that, right? So I was the only one who came to this job interview with any relevant work experience. I think either I managed to pull the wool over their eyes, or they saw something that I hadn't seen, but I managed to get a job with them. And I spent 7 fantastic years with that organization. They were great to me. I worked my ass off, but I was also promoted regularly. I ended up in London with Arthur Andersen, and that was, an eye-opener for me. So till that point, I had grown up pretty much in a fairly closed Indian environment. That exposed me to what else lay out there. And that thought of trying to take on the rest of the world really started gathering momentum from there on. So I decided to quit my job at Arthur Anderson, which was again a real shock for my parents. They thought कि यार बच्चा इतना पढ़ाई लिख लिया है, तुमने अब सब कुछ कर लिया, CA कर लिया, अच्छी नौकरी है, now you should settle down. But I just thought that at some point, you have to really think about what skills are you building. And I think as kids, it's very important really to think about skill building. We in our environment are so focused around the marks that at times we forget about the skills. Marks will take you only thus far. From beyond that, it's the skills that you build. It's what is what's really going to differentiate you later on in life. So I thought from a skill building point of view that MBA would have been a fantastic investment. So I decided to take that plunge. Again, took a huge student loan, went to B school. And as luck would have it, our first day of recruitment was September 11, 2001. So we had all the top recruiters of the world, the Goldman Sachs, the McKinseys, and you name it, all on campus. And everyone did, was watch the planes crash into the buildings. That is the only thing we did. So when people talk, and I was having one of these discussions last year at a forum, and people were talking, especially young kids were talking about how difficult the job market is. The job market in India last year was not difficult. Difficult is when 9/11 happens, when there are no jobs in the world. And when you are a true desi boy who's taken a huge student debt to go and do an MBA, and you find that there are no jobs in the world, then the shit really hits the ceiling. So managed to grind my way through that, kept at it, kept chugging along, and again, after numerous rejections, finally managed to get a job with Ford Motor Company out of their office in London. And again, great organization, loved their product. But it wasn't the organization for me. My employee ID in Ford, and this is etched in my memory, was 178,307. With an employee ID like that, I just felt I had no chance of making any impact in that organization. Hence, I decided to move on to a smaller organization where I thought, I would have at least some say in shaping the destiny of that organization. I joined this company called eBookers, which was a relatively young organization. It had just listed on the NASDAQ. And that's how I entered the world of online travel. During those 2.5 years, we managed to do fantastic things with that industry. It was really innovative, really cutting edge. Technology was just evolving. And lo and behold, middle of 2005, we got acquired by Sendent, and that was really a proud step for us. Right, I was part of a team which managed to sell a business, have a large exit, got sold for $400 million. But that joy actually turned out to be short-lived. The first thing that happened post the acquisition was I got fired. I was the COO. The new organization decided that, hey, we are going to put in our own management team. We don't want these guys. They're too close to the erstwhile promoter. They have a different mindset. We're going to put in our team. So here I was all this while putting everything into trying to make this acquisition work. And then the minute the acquisition is done, I'm out of the job. Now, as is tradition in London, right, you mentioned, right? If you're laid off or if you're leaving, you go out for leaving drinks. So a whole bunch of us went out for leaving drinks. I was the COO of the organization, so I had a large number of people from my team working with me. We all went together for leaving drinks. And in that moment of Dutch courage came this idea of yatra. And Dutch courage, for those of you who are not familiar with that saying, is the kind of decisions that you make under the influence of copious amount of alcohol. So in that moment of bravado, again, there were 5 of us who said, that's it, man, we are going to show these multinationals, what do they think? They don't know. India is a huge market. We are going to go and scale up and build a business over there. Over the course of the next 6 months, the hangover for at various points in time managed to, ease off. And out of the 5 people who were drunk at that point, only 2 of us remained drunk through that 6-month process to finally land up in India. So 2 of us, came here, and this was, I think, January of 2006 to start Yatra. In between, there was also another interesting thing that happened. And this is tremendously cliched. The day I got fired, the day I decided to get drunk, the day I decided to go back home and tell my wife that this is what I'm going to do, my wife told me, "Are you crazy? I'm expecting." So that was an interesting coincidence. Fortunately, things turned out in the right way over the course of the next, whatever, 8, 9 years. But through all of that period, what really saw me through was the self-belief. And people talk about passion, people talk about believing in yourself, and I think people don't really talk enough about some of these things. Because if you want to be an entrepreneur, one of the things that you need to really have in you is the belief that you can walk through a wall. You will never know all the answers. I don't think anyone ever knows the answers, right? But they have that self-belief. During the course of this, my own yatra, as I call it, we started off from 2 people. We are today 2,000 people, right? So we've scaled up. We've gone through a multitude of challenges. But all through these challenges, the only thing that keeps me going, and believe me, an entrepreneur's life is fairly lonely, is the self-belief. That come what may, whatever problems come up, I will manage to find a solution for it. I might not know the answer, but I have the belief that I have the wherewithal to find the answer. And I think that is the difference. Too often, people get too muddled up in saying, I don't know the answer. It's okay to not know the answer. And this holds true not just for work, I think even in personal life. There are lots of times when you don't know the answer to the situation that you're in. But you need to have the belief that you'll be able to find an answer. And I think that is equally important. So during these course of the 8, 9 years now that we've been doing this, we've scaled up from 2 people to 2,000 people. We would do $1 billion in terms of business now. But it hasn't been that smooth sailing. And this is before the dot-com or before tech industry in India in the last maybe 12 months has become hip again. We went through this entire phase where we were on a real high. Everything was hunky-dory. And then suddenly one morning, we get a call from a very prominent gentleman saying, listen, my airline's in trouble, and anything can happen now. Over the course of the next 3 months, what unfolded was literally the biggest fiasco for us, and Kingfisher, which at that time was one of the largest airlines, went bankrupt, and the entire industry imploded after that. We had to really think about what we were going to do post that. We were employing, I think, about 1,500 people at that point in time, and within a period of, I think, a month and a half, we lost about 1/3 of our revenue. So we suddenly had this huge, cost base without a revenue being there, and bleeding money left, right, and center, and investors on our back trying to figure out what the hell was happening in India, and is India the Wild West, right? Everyone seemed to say that, but we were always trying to convince people that India, on the outside is different. On the inside, things happen in a much more systematic manner. Everything is fine. It's just this is an Indian way of doing business. But you can only spill that spiel around for so long. Sooner or later, unfortunately, it tends to catch up with you. So we went through this process. We had to really pivot our business out of that. We made an acquisition of a company called Travel Guru, which was then into the hotels and holiday space. And that's how then we started rebuilding our business. So we had to lay off about 600 people, which was the most painful part of the business that I've been through. Because as an entrepreneur, what you're truly doing is you're selling a dream. When people join you, and especially the first 20, 30 people who join you, they're joining you because they believe in the dream that you're sharing. There is no business, right? You have just a piece of paper, maybe a presentation, maybe some technology, some software code that's happening in the background. But what they're truly joining is the dream that you're trying to sell to them. And when that dream implodes or when that dream fails, having to let go people is the most gut-wrenching thing that you can go through. And we had to do that at large scale. It was literally a process or a thought at that time that you literally have to give up an arm to save the rest of the body. We went through that, managed to pivot along the way, made the acquisition of Travel Guru, started a hotels and holiday business, and then it's taken us maybe 12, 18 months to really recover through that process out today. I don't think we're fully out of the woods, but we're slowly getting there. So it's been a great transition for us, and life on the outside seems always more glamorous than what it is in the inside. But during those dark days, right, as I said, it's the self-belief which will see you through. So if any one of you is aspiring or wants to become an entrepreneur, I think that is the thing that you really need to think about. Yes, you need to have a dream. Yes, you need to be passionate about it, right? But at the end of the day, what you really need to do is have that self-belief that come what may, you will be able to walk through that wall when it comes up in front of you. Thank you so much.